Today on Soul Work for Moms. One of the hardest parts of mothering can be feeling that our dreams and desires for our lives need to be put on hold until the children are grown. Today, I speak with a mother who decided to take one of her lifelong dreams off of the shelf and turn it into a reality, and that decision even led to her changing careers. Martha Nieset currently lives in Columbus, Ohio with her husband Terry and her son Sam. Martha grew up in rural Ohio, where she often found herself irresistibly drawn to travel, whether scanning stacks of National Geographic magazines, meeting exchange students in high school and college, or imagining all the possible places she could study abroad. After college, she went on her first trip overseas. It was her dream fulfilled, but after becoming a mother, she wanted more. At her core, Martha loves learning about new people, places, and experiencing and filling her life with adventure, culture, beliefs, and community. She feels most alive when seeking out and experiencing new challenges and adventures. Martha dreams of traveling the world with her family and educating her son along the way. She's still working out the details, but after making the decision to live in Nicaragua last year with her son for 5 months, she came back and founded Nicaragua Immersion to lead other families in experiencing the joys of adventure travel through close-up cultural encounters and impactful service. On today's episode, you'll hear the logistics of how Martha turned her travel dreams into a reality, the highs and lows for her son during that experience, what she learned about self-care along the way, and how speaking your dreams out loud can lead to having opportunities present themselves that you may currently think impossible. Hear Martha's interview along with your soul work action step for the week right after this. I'm Michelle Duncan-Wilson, and this is the Soul Work for Moms podcast, where I interview women about their journeys through motherhood and what they've learned about themselves along the way. I used to really struggle with my role as a mother, so I know what it's like to feel overwhelmed and unsure of what to do. If you want to grow both personally and spiritually through your journey of motherhood, this is the place for you. Welcome to Soul Work for Moms. Martha, welcome to the Soul Work for Moms podcast.
Thanks, Michelle. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So I heard about your story through a Facebook post, and I knew immediately that it was something that I had to share with everyone listening here because it was a post that linked to an article that you were featured in. And the title of the article was How This Single Mom Left It All to Live Her Dream. And it was referencing a decision that you made, I believe in 2015, and that was to leave your job, rent out your house, and move you and your son to Nicaragua for 5 months. So let's start out by having you tell us about where you were in your life prior to that decision, what was going on, and what led to that really big life decision of yours.
Yeah, so I had lived in Nicaragua about a month or two, maybe 12 years ago, when I did some volunteer work at an orphanage there. And back then, I remember spending time with these beautiful kids and just feeling really alive, experiencing this new place and the culture, and just feeling great about it. But I always knew that I would have kids someday. I felt like, I just always felt like that was part of who I was and would be. And I remember spending time with these kids and thinking, you know what, someday I would like to bring my kid back here to experience this. So I specifically always remember having that thought and where I was near Lake Nicaragua, actually having those thoughts. And so, life continued on. I went back to, came back to the States and to work and continued on with my life. And then here I was, couple of years ago, and I was recently separated from my husband. We had been married about 5 or 6 years when we separated, and I was kind of just, had moved on to the next thing. I was working pretty much full time, raising my son here in Columbus, Ohio, and this kept popping back into my head. Like, I've always wanted to travel with my son, and I wasn't doing it yet. Well, my husband and I, we had traveled a little bit around the US, but I still had that dream to take him to Nicaragua. And for some reason it was popping into my head over and over. And I kind of just Googled it one night. I was like, could I really do this? And I was like, let's look around. And so I Googled it, and then I started finding, there's blogs about US citizens or expats living in Nicaragua. Oh, what do they have to say? Or, oh, look, there's some with kids. Where do their kids go to school? So I just kept getting more and more drawn into, I could do this. Look at these people. They're doing it. And realizing, wow, this is possible. And so that kind of just got me on this path of thinking about it.
So at what point did you know that you were going to do it?
For several months, it was sort of iffy. At first I kind of started saying it out loud to a few people that I trusted and who were really supportive to me at that time. And none of these people ever said, Martha, you're crazy. They all said, you know what? You should do that. You could do that, Martha. That would be great. It'd be great for you. It'd be great for Sam. And so I just kept going. It was kind of amazing that these doors started to just feel like they kind of kept coming open, like this was becoming possible. And so I kept going with that. And then what I thought for me was the pinnacle, maybe there was two, one of them being I had to have my house rented out because I knew financially I needed to have the house rented out in order to do this. And that happened. I took the steps I needed to find some good renters, and they felt really solid. And I was like, okay, now I'm doing it. And then I think the second step was the moment I punched the button to purchase our airline tickets. Sitting there in front of my computer going, am I doing this? I think I'm doing this. I'm going to do this. And it was like, boom, and this feeling in my stomach and my whole body was like, oh, shit, I'm doing this. But I was like, yeah, we're doing this at the same time.
I think everyone's probably thinking, I mean, what about work? What was that? How does that all fit into picking up and leaving the country?
Yeah. So I've worked in higher education, mostly in the field of computing and data analytics for over 10 years. And yeah, so it was a little bit difficult to leave. It's always been a really kind of solid job for me. But at the same time, not something that I was excited or passionate about. So, and it gave me a lot of balance that I could, not a lot of jobs always allow for with raising a child and having time with them. So I've really kind of stayed with it for a long time when there's always been this other thing kind of tugging at me. So I had just figured, 5 months is kind of an odd time period. Like, why would you go to Nicaragua for 5 months? But that was what I had figured out. I think financially we could do it for 6 months. And I had read people's blogs about what their cost of living was, so I figured, all right, I have this much saved. I think we could do it for this period of time. I feel pretty confident that, when I come back, I can find another job. I have experience in this field and maybe this experience will take me in a new direction. That's what I kind of wanted to do. Part of what I wanted from it was to find out if I could take my career in a new direction in something that I'm more excited about.
Okay. So, I just want to be clear. You had enough saved so that you were able to leave your job and you figured you had enough to live on for about 5 or 6 months and took that leap of faith that you were going to come back home and then find some sort of work again.
Yes. Yeah. That was my intention with leaving. Even though my husband and I were separated, like he's been, very connected in with our son and his care. And it was a blessing that he was willing to say, yeah, it's okay for you to take him for this 5 months. I support you. And, and him just staying in touch with our son while we are gone. And so, yeah, so that was a big deal. And
so you buy the plane tickets, you figure everything out. 5 months, that's more than a summer. So did your son go to school down there?
Yeah. The school where he was going was an international school. So it worked on the same calendar as the U.S. schools do, with August to May or early June school calendar, whereas most Nicaraguan schools work on the school calendar where they begin in February and go through like November or December. And so it worked out that he could do the second half of second grade in the school that we went to.
And what was that experience like, having your son go from American school to a school in a totally different country?
Well, the year and a half prior to us going down there, he had been doing an online homeschool. So he was in a typical curriculum for the U.S., but with a lot of flexibility around his time and such. So this was really going back to a brick and mortar school for him, though very similar subjects that he was studying, but definitely like a different flair. So the school there, for their social studies, they only really have access to written materials for Nicaraguan history. So their social studies focused on Nicaragua and the area and its history rather than U.S. history. And then the language difference. So having a Spanish class and an English class, he had both of those as part of his schooling. But then, like math and writing and things were very similar. And then part of his school was in Spanish and part of it was in English, just depending which subject they were teaching.
And if he was doing online school when he was in the States, was that an intentional decision for you to put him into a brick and mortar school down there and not just continue doing online schooling while you were there?
Yeah, I really like the location that we chose was really because I found this school and I thought, oh, wow, I really liked their philosophy. I liked that he was getting immersed in Spanish, but still had some English as well. And so, yeah, it was a conscious choice. Like I knew that I didn't want to and couldn't take on being his full-time teacher at the same time we were doing this 5 months in Nicaragua. I needed to have some time to process and maybe do some volunteering and get experience of my own to kind of help with that career shift. And even when we did the homeschooling here in Ohio, his dad did part of that. And then another friend who homeschooled did the other subjects. And so actually I was always the working parent in that scenario, not the homeschooling parent.
Cool. Got it. So when you guys, the two of you fly down there, you get off the plane. What was that like for you emotionally?
It was exciting and I was nervous at the same time. I remember being like a week before when I had really solidified where we were going to stay when we arrived and how we were getting there from the airport, because we were arriving at night. It was dark, 9:00 at night. I haven't been in this country for 10 years. And, and then I have my son along with me. I'm like, so I remember thinking, oh my gosh, just gosh, and so this friend, I had been Skyping with him. We had met years ago in Seattle when he was Nicaraguan and he was studying English in University of Washington out in Seattle. And that's when we had met. And so we had stayed in touch just every now and then over Skype or email or something. And so finally we had the conversation. He's like, would you like me to pick you up with a taxi? And I'm like, yes, please. Yes. So I was just so grateful that he was like, I will meet you there and we'll get you to actually the hostel. I had set up a hostel for us for 2 days, the first 2 days after we arrived. And he said, I'll get you there. No problem. And so that's what we did. It was wonderful to like get off the plane and walk out. And here's this friend who I remember from all these years ago standing there with a big smile, welcoming us to Nicaragua and then, taking us personally to this hostel. And he actually dropped us off and then he had to drive home another like 45 minutes. And so it was another feeling of like, okay, I've arrived, I feel safe. And then all of a sudden he was dropping us off at this hostel and going to leave. And I was like, okay, here it is again, so this like sinking feeling of something else new and a little bit scary. But I just kept rolling with it. And yeah.
And as a mother, what did you see the highs and lows were for your son?
my son, he was just like we've always talked about, we have maps on the walls of our home, and he talked about traveling places, and we've traveled a lot with him in the US. So he was had been excited about, oh, we're going to travel to Nicaragua. And, he was not excited about having to go to school somewhere, and he was apprehensive about that. And even when we arrived in Nicaragua, he was dead tired when we arrived in the hostel. And I remember him waking up and saying to me, as we're getting out of the car and going in to find our bedroom, like, Mom, this is not what I thought it was going to be like. And my heart sank, and I'm like, it's okay, buddy. It'll be different tomorrow, And you know what? It was incredibly different tomorrow. Like the next day we woke up and we're in this lovely little quiet hostel, and they had a big swimming pool and just the kindest people running the place. And we just started kind of having conversations with them and really connecting with them. And they kind of fell in love with Sam. And so we made these amazing connections. Really, they became our family while we were living in Nicaragua. And so for Sam, it was kind of like a lot of ups and downs. Like, I think he didn't want to start school right away. And he would give me kind of all the lines like, oh, I should wait one more day, Mom, or we should do this first. Till finally I'm like, come on, let's go. And then he met some kids and they were all welcoming to him and he was excited. And, and then there was other days where kind of after he got into it a couple of weeks, it wasn't so new and exciting anymore. And he would get apprehensive about going to school again. And you just never know if that's, if he's having some problem at school or if it's just a long day or.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like sending your kids to school here in the States, right? Same stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, that was like, I had to remind myself that, it wasn't just because I took my kids somewhere new and he was struggling so much. It was just part of what it's like for kids going to school sometimes. And so, when it got hard, I just, instead of getting hard back with him, I just tried to be soft and remind him why it was important to me that we were there and what I wanted for him to get out of it too. And, we just take that extra time to cuddle that day and have some space and time together. And I would walk him to school, and it really opened up a lot of time for us. Instead of running off to work and dropping him I could take more time in the morning and hang out with him and just give him the time that he needed. And then volunteer at the school on certain days too, and just do some of those things that I wasn't able to do when we were back home.
And you said in the article that I referenced earlier that the experience led you to some pretty big realizations about motherhood and self-care.
I think with motherhood, I've kind of fallen into the track of doing what I should do, really kind of just giving in a lot of ways, but not taking the time that I needed to take care of myself or to really seek out and make space for those things that I wanted in my life. I think it's a big kind of balancing act and has been a struggle for me in the past. And so I think with some of the different support networks I had been seeking out to help improve my self-care, I really found support in taking time to think about what is it that I want in my life, and then speaking that out loud. It was amazing how much feedback and support that I got once I spoke that out loud. And then I felt more supported and empowered to move forward in that. And that was something that was really new for me. I wasn't seeking out these different support networks in order to go to Nicaragua. It was just, I had figured out that, hey, I need more support in my life. And so I kind of just led me down these different paths. And then all of a sudden I was finally speaking out what I really cared about and what excited me in my life and in the world. And then I got support in that. It was just amazing what opened up, the possibilities that opened up, and actually taking time to think, hey, this is really possible. Whereas in the past, I felt more stuck in, this is what I have to do. I have to be responsible about this. And so things weren't possible before, whereas now they had become possible.
That's so powerful because as mothers, so often we think that we have these dreams inside of us and that will come later. The time will come later. The time for the dreaming will come later. And just by not even speaking those dreams, the possibility isn't there. And it's like this reaffirming affirmation that we can't get the dreams that we have been longing for. And it's amazing the second that you start speaking those things and telling people those dreams, how much everything starts to line up. And it's like a stepping stone path where the next stone just appears, right? One after the other. We had mentioned that you had left your job and you stayed down there for 5 months. And when you came back, the experience of living there for 5 months has turned into a business of yours where you help others do exactly what you had set out to do. And that is experience Nicaragua with your family. So tell us about that.
In my 5 months of, just taking time to think about what is it that I enjoy, I spent some time with a nonprofit that works with students who are doing like short-term study abroad. So groups of college students from the U.S. would come to the town where we were at, Granada, and they would do homestays, stay with a local Nicaraguan family. They would go out each day and do a service project, whether it's teaching English to kids or working at a clinic or something like that. And then they would also do trip excursions. So they would go visit one of the volcanoes, go see the islands that are just on the edge of the lake near Granada, go learn about the history of one of the local jails that has since been discontinued. It was something that I really loved. And I thought, oh, wow, this is what I really enjoy doing this. I like meeting these people and showing them this new place and helping them to connect with local culture and having this experience that kind of opens their eyes. And at the same time, I'd been going through that with my own son and us together. And so this idea came about where I thought, you know what, I would love to do this with families. And that was the experience I had too. I was a family coming to Nicaragua. And so it was just those two things kind of merged one day as I was talking to this friend that runs the organization there. And she's like, yeah, we can do this together. That would be great. And so that's when I started talking to a business coach about how to get something like this started. And so I joined one of her courses and really just started to learn how to do that, how to create an online presence and find families that have interest in travel and education and cultural experiences. And then it just kind of grew from there. And so we came back from Nicaragua and I began working on those kind of things, kind of step by step. And now we're several months out from when I've launched that and getting started.
And so if there's a family that is interested in taking a trip and they contact you, what are you helping them arrange? Is it like from point A to point B and everything in between and back home again? How does that work?
Yeah, I definitely do initial consults for families who are just interested in traveling more and they want insights into Nicaragua as a travel destination because it really is a very family-friendly place despite sort of the history of the media around Nicaragua. So right now, I'm also focusing at the same time on 10-day cultural immersion trips where we do small groups, so maybe 3 or 4 families that have an interest in traveling with their kids, fly into the capital of Nicaragua, and I meet those families and I actually personally guide them for the 10-day immersion tour. And we do a lot of things I mentioned before that these college students are doing, but we do them at a different pace. We do it at a family's pace. So families actually stay with Nicaraguan families and they eat with them and they cook for them. And you really get to see people up close and kind of share stories with them and see their lives. Also go out and do a little bit of service. So we do a few hours of service for part of the week and then go and do fun excursions. We take a boat tour through the islands. We go and look into a volcano. We go to a lake inside of a volcano. It's really stuff you would never see in the United States. I'll say that because it's a very different climate and landscape and culture and everything. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
The show is not over yet, but I wanted to remind you that we'll be wrapping up Season 1 with Episode 20. It's an interview with the fabulous artist and mother, Kelly Ray Roberts, and I'll be back with Season 2 in the fall. If you'd like to get some free bonus material over the summer, make sure you're following along on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And I also wanted to make sure that you know that there are free soul worksheets available for every episode on soulworkformoms.com. Each and every soul worksheet has that week's action step from the episode listed at the top, along with 5 journaling questions inspired by the show. So by the end of season 1, you could have 20 free soul worksheets to work through over the summer. So if that sounds like something you'd like to do, be sure to check that out on soulworkformoms.com. Now let's get back to the show. Looking back now, what does your son have to say about his 5 months there?
Well, Sam would say the thing he always brings up, and is kind of ironic, is the thing I love about Nicaragua is you don't have to wear seatbelts. And I'm like, oh, great. Everybody thinks I'm a horrible parent. There are actually seatbelt laws in Nicaragua, but, there's so many other things going on that the country is dealing with that, seatbelts is not always enforced the same way that it is in the States, or people just don't have cars that have really great seatbelts or whatever. So, and it's funny because that was just one of those things where, like, the first day we arrived, we got into this car and he's just perfectly trained. He went to put on his seatbelt just like he should. And he looks up and it didn't actually work. And we're in the back. I'm like, it's okay, honey. We'll be fine. So yeah, it was just sort of like a freeing thing, I think, for him to realize, oh, the rules aren't the same exactly everywhere in the world,
Cool. What advice do you have for mothers who have a burning desire to see the world, but they think that they do need to wait 20 years until their children are grown and out of the house?
I would say, travel comes in all shapes and sizes. And if there is something that you want to do or someplace you want to see with your kids or on your own, figure out how you can carve that into your life. Could you do a 3 or 4 day trip to, depending where you're at, to Toronto or to Canada? If it's culture you love, you can go and experience different cultures, even in some of these big cities. Or if it's adventure that you want, how could you do that? I would just say, just imagine doing some of it. I'm in the middle of interviews with 12 family travel experts. And these are folks some have been traveling a year with their kids. Some have traveled 4 years with their family. And every one of them's story is different. Some of them are doing travel full time and just, educating their kids around the world. But others, both moms and dads, have full-time jobs, but they love to travel and they figured out how they can make it possible, whether it's saving money or there's all kinds of great tips out there for cost saving with travel. And I guess I just say there's all different possibilities. So imagine that it's possible and think about what it is that you want to do and say it out loud, say it to somebody who supports you and will support you.
You were referencing a telesummit that you're doing, and I'll make sure that I put links to your website so that any listener that would like to hear those interviews that you talk about can find that easily. How would you say that experience of travel has changed you as a mother? I
would say it's opened the door of possibility for me. I remember being so scared, thinking about, oh my God, people are going to think I'm crazy. Can I really do this? I have no idea what this is going to look like. And now I've done it. And after I was there even a month or two, I was like, this is great. This was no big deal. I forgot so quickly, what a big deal it was for me to take that step. And all of a sudden it became more of, oh, this is kind of normal. Now I'm back in the States and no, it's not, nobody thinks it's normal. But for a while there, I was kind of living like it was. So I think it's just really opened up the possibility of doing more travel with my son. And really, because for me, I just continually experiencing new places and cultures. This is just something that I absolutely love and really makes me feel alive in the world. And so I've realized that I can do more of this. And there are ways that I can figure out or that I can be supported in that. And so I'm working on it. I'm going to make it happen. We're going to start wrapping up, but I want to know, what's the main thing that you hope that Sam remembers about childhood? I think I want my son just to think back and one, remember he's loved and that he came from a place where he was wanted and cared about, and maybe just has memories of connection with his family and positive thoughts on learning. Yeah, I want him to have fond memories, and that those are the things that stick out the most when he thinks back of his childhood.
And last question for you. What is one thing that you want all mothers to know?
I want all mothers to know that we're better together and with support. I think the times we live in, there's more of an individualistic flip to our society. And I think it's really hard on us. And we tend to be the ones that hold things together. And so often it's our dreams and loves that come in last in that. But if we can find ways that we can support each other, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing that what we can do. And I think it's not obvious, and we don't all realize it because we've grown up in it. Find the support you need and people that will listen to you and what you care about and what matters to you and why it matters, and get that support at all costs, because it's the only way we're going to make this world better for us, for women, is doing it together with having each other's back and supporting each other and just believing and trusting in each other.
That's beautiful. And I so appreciate, Martha, that you're doing that. You've done it. You took the risk. You were brave. You did something that was on your heart, a dream. You lived it. And not only that, but now you're coming back and you are helping other women and families have that experience for themselves. And that is the community. That is the tribe. That is the sisterhood of motherhood, that we have to be able to rely on one another and, most importantly, support one another and to help encourage each other to live out those dreams. And I'm just really inspired by you and your story and what you did last year on those 5 months with your son, and even more inspired that you are creating a community and a business and a way to help other women do the same. It's really beautiful.
Michelle, thank you for having me and allowing me to share my story with all the moms that follow you. Thank you.
Powerful, life-changing things can happen for you when you speak your dreams. Your soul work action step is to speak a dream that you have to as many people as you can this week. What is that thing that your heart yearns for, but that you don't think is possible? Let us know. Say to us, you know what I've always wanted to do? Or you know what would feel so good to me right now? Tell us. We limit ourselves so much by assuming that what we dream about isn't possible because of finances or work situations or fear of how other people in our lives will react. Mamas, we have to stop limiting ourselves and our lives because we think that it's not possible, or we're embarrassed to admit to others what it is that we dream of. I have so many examples of this from my personal life. It could be a whole episode of its own. Everything from the time I told my husband that I dreamed of taking a week vacation by myself, or when I thought it would never be possible for us to live in San Francisco. And little by little, by speaking that dream out loud, it's turned into us living there every summer. Go to soulworkformoms.com, grab your free soul work journaling sheet, take a deeper dive into your soul work around fulfilling your dreams. That's where you'll also find links to Martha's website, nicaraguaimmersion.com, and her Facebook page, immersion.nicaragua. Be sure to join us next week for episode 20, the final interview of season 1 with artist and mama Kelly Ray Roberts. Kelly Ray is an incredibly popular and successful artist, and she talks about how she made the shift from social worker to full-time artist, how she handles her time when artistic inspiration hits, what she did about all the guilt she experienced after becoming a mother, how wearing her joy has changed her life, and so much more. I'll end today by reminding you once again that you matter. Your dreams matter. And when your soul is fulfilled, your children get to be loved and inspired by a mother who is fulfilled. And we get to be loved and inspired by seeing you as a mother fulfilled. And that is evolution through mothering. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next week.